What if I told you that there's a hidden book in the Bible, one that was almost lost to history, a book that has been deliberately removed from most versions of the sacred text, the Book of Jubilees? A forbidden treasure that holds secrets about humanity's creation, divine covenants, and a path to ultimate salvation, secrets that could change everything we know about our purpose on earth. For centuries, the Book of Jubilees was pushed aside, erased from the pages of mainstream Christian doctrine. Why? What truth does this ancient text hold that has been deliberately hidden from the masses? What if everything you thought you knew about creation, the divine laws and the future redemption of mankind, is just the beginning of a much deeper mystery? In this video, we will uncover the untold truths within the Book of Jubilees. You'll discover why this sacred text was excluded from the Western Bible, what it says about God's covenant with humanity, and how its teachings can still guide us today. From the importance of the Sabbath to the role of angelic messengers, this book offers a unique glimpse into the heavenly realm and the divine plan that has been unfolding since the beginning of time. But here's the real question. What if the ancient wisdom of Jubilees could unlock answers to the deepest questions of your life, answers that have been hidden for generations? You're about to understand why the Book of Jubilees, with its prophecies of salvation and divine purity, could radically transform how you live today. So, I invite you to keep watching, dive into the truths that have been kept secret, and see how they align with the life you're called to lead. Don't forget to comment below with your thoughts. Do you believe there's more to the Bible than what we've been told? Subscribe and like if you're ready to explore these forgotten truths. The hidden truth of the Book of Jubilees, a forbidden scripture. The Book of Jubilees is not just another ancient text. It is a key that unlocks a hidden dimension of the Bible's truth. For centuries, this book has been veiled, kept out of sight by the very institutions that shaped the religious landscape of the West. But why was it removed from the Bible? What made its message so dangerous, so unsettling, that those in power deemed it unfit for the eyes of the masses? The story begins in the 2nd century BCE, when the Book of Jubilees was written. Unlike the linear chronology found in Genesis, Jubilees presents a divine structure of history, dividing it into periods of 49 years, each one marked as a jubilee. Every jubilee is a reminder of God's covenant with his people, a solemn contract to uphold righteousness, purity, and faithfulness. This was no ordinary text. It was a divine blueprint for the way the world was meant to unfold. In the Book of Jubilees, you find a world deeply connected to the divine order. It's not just about people walking the earth, but about angels who actively participate in the shaping of humanity's destiny. There's a mystical, otherworldly aspect to this book, something that has been disregarded by mainstream theology. And yet, within these pages lie profound insights about the role of humanity in God's grand design, insights that continue to resonate with our lives today. But why has this book been kept hidden for so long? The answer lies in the content itself. The Book of Jubilees was written during a time when the early Christian church was solidifying its beliefs and practices. There were certain teachings, such as the importance of the Sabbath and strict adherence to Jewish law, that conflicted with the emerging Christian message. The book's focus on the role of angels and the detailed laws of purity was seen as too radical, too speculative. It posed a challenge to the Gentile converts who were moving away from Jewish traditions. As a result, the Book of Jubilees was excluded from the Western canon, pushed aside in favor of texts that would more easily align with the new religious order. But let's pause here for a moment. Why do we as modern believers continue to ignore the lessons from the Book of Jubilees? It's more than just a religious artifact. It's a call to remember the sacred laws, to return to the divine structure that was set in place long before we came to be. The Sabbath, for instance, is not just a day of rest. It is a sacred covenant with the Creator. In a world that rushes forward, too consumed by the demands of daily life, we've forgotten the deep spiritual significance of the Sabbath, and with it, we've lost touch with the rhythm of creation itself. The Book of Jubilees reminds us of the importance of sacred time. It calls us back to a way of life that is ordered, intentional, and connected to God. This is not just about following rules for the sake of rules. This is about restoring balance in our lives. It's a lesson that we need today more than ever, in a world that constantly pulls us in a million different directions. The message of the Book of Jubilees is clear. God's covenant is eternal, and it requires our faithfulness. But it also teaches us that our actions have consequences. The purity of our hearts, our adherence to God's laws, and our commitment to justice and righteousness are not just personal matters. They affect the entire community and the world at large. Just as Abraham's faithfulness to God's covenant marked a turning point in human history, so too does our faithfulness to God's commandments shape the future. The lessons from Jubilees remind us that our choices matter, not only for us, but for generations to come. And so, as we move forward in our exploration of the Book of Jubilees, we must ask ourselves, are we living in alignment with God's divine order? Are we honoring the sacred time and space that God has set apart for us? Or have we strayed too far from the path, too absorbed in the distractions of a world that offers fleeting satisfaction? This brings us to the heart of the book's message. It's not just about history or theology, it's about us, here and now. We are called to live in harmony with God's will, to walk in purity and faith, and to remember the eternal covenant that binds us to our Creator. The role of angels, divine messengers in the Book of Jubilees. As we move deeper into the Book of Jubilees, we encounter a profound and often overlooked aspect of this ancient text: the role of angels. Angels are not distant beings who simply watch from the heavens. In Jubilees, they are active participants in the unfolding of God's plan for humanity. In this book, angels are not merely messengers, they are divine agents, guiding and shaping the course of history. They are intermediaries between the human and divine realms, ensuring that God's will is carried out on earth. They bring messages to Noah, instruct Abraham, and serve as agents of divine justice. They are, in essence, the architects of the cosmic order. This is a radical concept, one that challenges the way we often view angels in modern Christianity. We tend to think of angels as passive observers, perhaps whispering encouragement in our ears or offering protection when we need it. But in Jubilees, angels are deeply involved in the workings of the world. They are instruments of God's justice, messengers of His divine wisdom, and caretakers of His covenant with humanity. Why is this significant for us today? In a world that often feels disconnected from the divine, the Book of Jubilees offers a reminder that we are not alone. We are surrounded by a spiritual realm that is actively involved in our lives, guiding us, protecting us, and helping us fulfill our divine purpose. It's a powerful lesson in faith, one that invites us to open our eyes to the unseen world around us. But there's also a warning here. The angels in Jubilees are not just protectors, they are enforcers of divine law. They hold humanity accountable for its actions. And when we stray from God's path, they bring correction. In a society that often values personal freedom above all else, the idea of divine accountability can be uncomfortable. Yet, it's essential for our spiritual growth. It reminds us that our actions have consequences, not just in this life, but in the spiritual realm as well. So, as we reflect on the role of angels in the Book of Jubilees, we must ask ourselves, how often do we seek divine guidance in our lives? How open are we to the messages that God is sending us through His messengers? Are we willing to listen and follow, even when it means changing our course? The angels in Jubilees offer us a glimpse into a world that is far greater than we can imagine, a world where the divine and the human are intertwined, and where every action we take has eternal significance. Number 4. The sacredness of the Sabbath, a divine covenant. One of the most powerful themes in the Book of Jubilees is the sacredness of the Sabbath. In a world that is constantly moving, the Sabbath offers a divine pause, a moment to step back from the demands of daily life and reconnect with God. But it's more than just a day of rest. It is a sign of the covenant between God and his people. In Jubilees, the Sabbath is not merely a suggestion, it is a divine command. It is a day set apart, a time to honor God and acknowledge his sovereignty over creation. By keeping the Sabbath, we participate in God's eternal rhythm, aligning ourselves with his will and restoring balance to our lives. The Sabbath is a symbol of divine order. It reminds us that we are not in control of everything, that there is a higher power that governs the universe. It calls us to humility, to recognize that we are finite beings in need of rest, renewal, and spiritual connection. But in our modern world, the Sabbath has become little more than a fleeting thought, a relic of a bygone era. We are so consumed by the hustle and bustle of life that we've forgotten the importance of rest. The Sabbath, once a sacred gift, has become a forgotten practice. The Book of Jubilees calls us back to this ancient truth. It reminds us that the Sabbath is not just a day of physical rest, but a spiritual discipline that brings healing to the soul. It is an opportunity to step away from the noise of the world and listen to the still, small voice of God. As we reflect on the Sabbath in the context of Jubilees, we must ask ourselves, are we honoring the Sabbath as a sacred time? Are we allowing ourselves to rest, to reconnect with God, and to live in harmony with the divine rhythm of creation? Or have we allowed the demands of the world to rob us of this precious gift? Number 5. The eternal covenant, a call to faithfulness. At the heart of the Book of Jubilees lies the concept of the eternal covenant. From the very beginning, God established a covenant with his people, a promise to be their God and for them to be his people. This covenant was not temporary. It was everlasting, a bond that transcended time and space. The covenant is not just about following rules or living by a set of laws. It is about relationship. It is about faithfulness to God and the commitment to walk in his ways. In Jubilees, the covenant is portrayed as a living, breathing relationship that requires ongoing faithfulness. Just as Abraham was called to be faithful to God's commands, so too are we called to live in alignment with his will. This is a call to a deeper level of commitment, one that goes beyond superficial religious practices and touches the very core of our being. The covenant is not just something we inherit. It is something we choose to live out day by day, moment by moment. In a world that often values convenience over commitment, the eternal covenant calls us to a higher standard. It challenges us to live with integrity, to honor our promises, and to remain faithful to God even when it is difficult. The Book of Jubilees teaches us that faithfulness to God's covenant is not just about what we do on Sundays or in moments of crisis. It is about how we live every day, in every decision, and in every relationship. It is a call to holiness, to purity, and to a life that reflects the goodness and righteousness of God. As we move forward, let us ask ourselves, how are we living out the eternal covenant in our own lives? Are we faithful to the promises God has made to us? Are we walking in the way of righteousness, honoring God with every step? The sacredness of the Sabbath, a divine covenant. As we delve deeper into the Book of Jubilees, one of the most striking and central themes is the sacredness of the Sabbath, a divine command, not merely for rest, but as a living, breathing covenant that binds humanity to the Creator. The Sabbath in Jubilees is far more than a day off from labor. It is a sacred time set apart for reflection, connection, and worship. It is a divine invitation to step away from the chaos of life and immerse ourselves in the eternal rhythm of God's creation. In a world that constantly pushes us to be productive, to achieve, to hustle, the Sabbath offers a powerful counter-narrative. It calls us to pause, to cease striving, and to recognize that we are part of a grand design far greater than our own efforts. The Book of Jubilees stresses the importance of observing the Sabbath as a perpetual covenant between God and His people. It is a divine seal, a mark of obedience, and an acknowledgement of God's sovereignty over all creation. In this sacred time, we find healing, restoration, and the chance to recalibrate our hearts and minds. When we honor the Sabbath, we are reminded that we are not in control of everything. We are finite beings, and there is wisdom in recognizing our limitations. God, in His infinite wisdom, has given us the Sabbath as a gift, a day to rest, renew, and refocus on what truly matters. In the stillness of this holy time, we encounter the peace that surpasses all understanding. It is a time to reconnect with the divine, to nourish our spirits, and to remember the deeper purpose of our lives. But the Sabbath is not just a day, it is a symbol of divine order. The Book of Jubilees paints a picture of a world that is in harmony with God's will, a world where time itself is sacred and each moment is imbued with divine significance. When we neglect the Sabbath, we are not just ignoring a religious practice. We are disconnecting from the flow of God's will, from the very rhythm of creation itself. In a society that values constant motion and productivity, the Sabbath reminds us to slow down and breathe. It challenges us to step back and examine our lives. Are we truly living in alignment with God's plan? Are we honoring His command to rest and reflect? Or are we too consumed by the demands of our daily existence to hear His call? In the midst of the noise, the Sabbath offers a quiet refuge, a place to find peace, restoration, and renewal. It is a reminder that we are not defined by what we do, but by who we are in God. The Sabbath is a day to return to our true selves, to let go of the distractions that pull us away from our spiritual center, and to realign our hearts with God's purpose. The sacredness of the Sabbath calls us to live with intention, to honor the rhythms of divine time, and to allow God's peace to fill every part of our being. As we reflect on the power of the Sabbath in the Book of Jubilees, we are reminded that true rest is not just physical, it is spiritual. In honoring the Sabbath, we open ourselves to the deep healing and renewal that only God can provide. The eternal covenant, a call to faithfulness. At the heart of the Book of Jubilees lies a powerful and profound truth: the eternal covenant between God and His people. This covenant is not a fleeting promise. It is an unbreakable bond, a divine agreement that stretches across time and history. From the very beginning, God made a covenant with humanity, a promise to be their God and for them to be His people. This covenant is not merely a contract, it is a relationship, a sacred commitment that requires faithfulness, obedience, and trust. The covenant in the Book of Jubilees is not just a historical concept, it is a living reality, one that continues to shape our lives today. It is a call to remain faithful to God's commandments, to walk in righteousness, and to live in a way that honors the divine will. The covenant is not just about following laws, it is about living in alignment with God's purpose for our lives. It is about living with integrity, purity, and a deep commitment to justice and truth. In Jubilees, the covenant is not something that can be taken lightly. It is an everlasting bond, one that requires our whole hearts, minds, and lives. God's promises are sure, but they require our active participation. The faithfulness of the people is what sustains the covenant, and in turn, the covenant is what sustains them. It is a relationship of mutual trust and commitment, where God's love is the foundation, and human obedience is the response. But the covenant is not just about what we do, It is about what God has already done for us. From the moment he made his covenant with Abraham, God set in motion a plan of salvation, a plan that would culminate in the ultimate redemption of Israel and the entire world. The covenant is a promise of hope, of restoration, and of a future where righteousness will reign. It is a divine pledge that no matter how far we may stray, God's faithfulness will never fail. In our own lives, the call to faithfulness is just as urgent. We are part of this eternal covenant, and our faithfulness to God is what keeps this divine relationship alive. The covenant is not a one-time agreement. It is a daily commitment, one that requires us to choose God's will over our own desires, to walk in purity, and to live according to his divine laws. It is a call to holiness, to obedience, and to trust in the promise that God will never leave us or forsake us. The Book of Jubilees calls us to remember the sacredness of this covenant and to live as if it is the most important thing in our lives. It challenges us to examine our hearts, to see where we may have broken our part of the covenant, and to return to God with humility and repentance. This is not just about personal salvation. It is about being faithful to the divine purpose that God has set before us. In a world that often seeks to break commitments, to value convenience over faithfulness, the eternal covenant stands as a beacon of hope and truth. It is a reminder that God is faithful, and he calls us to reflect that same faithfulness in our lives. The covenant is not just about what we receive from God, but about what we offer to him, our obedience, our love, and our devotion. As we reflect on the eternal covenant in the Book of Jubilees, let us remember that we are not alone in this journey. God is with us, guiding us, strengthening us, and empowering us to live out his will. The covenant is not just a promise for the past, it is a promise for the present and the future. And as we remain faithful, we can trust that God will fulfill his promises in our lives. The Book of Jubilees offers us a profound understanding of God's divine plan and the sacredness of the covenant he has made with his people. Through the Sabbath, we learn the importance of rest and renewal, of reconnecting with the divine rhythm that sustains all creation. Through the eternal covenant, we are reminded of our call to faithfulness, to walk in alignment with God's will, and to live out the promises he has made to us. These ancient truths, though long hidden from most of the world, continue to speak to us today, offering healing, restoration, and a deeper understanding of our relationship with the Creator. In the fast-paced world we live in, it is easy to forget the eternal truths that anchor us. But the Book of Jubilees calls us to return to what is sacred, to remember the covenant that binds us to God, and to live in accordance with his divine will. As we do, we find peace, fulfillment, and the assurance that God's promises are true, now and forever. The role of angels, divine messengers and guardians. In the Book of Jubilees, the role of angels goes far beyond what many of us might imagine. In the modern Christian understanding, angels are often viewed as gentle messengers, protectors, or guardians. However, in Jubilees, angels take on a more active and powerful role as divine agents, shaping the course of history and enforcing God's will on earth. They are not distant, ethereal beings that only appear at moments of divine intervention. They are integral to the unfolding of God's plan. The angels in the Book of Jubilees are presented as mediators between the divine and human realms. Their work is not passive, but deeply involved in the shaping of humanity's destiny. They serve as messengers who deliver the commands of God, guide his chosen people, and even execute divine justice. In fact, the angels act as instruments of God's order, carrying out his will, ensuring that the covenant established with humanity is upheld. Take, for example, the story of the angel who reveals to Noah the impending flood, giving him the instructions for building the ark. It is not just a warning, but an action plan delivered by divine messengers. Their involvement shows us that the divine realm is not distant or detached from our world. Rather, it is intricately woven into the fabric of our existence, guiding us and providing us with the wisdom we need to fulfill God's will. In our own lives, the role of angels can feel distant, perhaps even mystical. We may wonder if angels are really active in the modern world, but the Book of Jubilees reminds us that the divine world is not separate from the earthly one. It is in constant interplay. Angels are not merely protectors, they are God's messengers, guiding us to walk the path He has set before us. They remind us that we are never alone in our journey, and that divine assistance is always available to those who seek it. This truth invites us to look at the world through a different lens. It calls us to open our hearts to the divine presence in our lives, to recognize that we are part of a larger cosmic story, one that is unfolding with purpose and meaning. As we acknowledge the angel's role in guiding and protecting us, we must also consider how we can be more attuned to the divine messages in our own lives. Are we open to the guidance and wisdom that the angels bring? Are we ready to follow the path that has been set for us, trusting that God's messengers are leading us toward His ultimate plan? The purity of the covenant, a call to personal holiness. As we continue our exploration of the Book of Jubilees, we come to another critical theme, the purity of the covenant. The book emphasizes the need for holiness, both individually and communally, as a vital aspect of maintaining the relationship between God and His people. The covenant, as presented in Jubilees, is not a mere agreement. It is a call to a higher standard of living, a life marked by purity, justice, and righteousness. In the Book of Jubilees, purity is not just a physical condition, it is a spiritual one. The laws that govern purity, whether regarding dietary restrictions, marriage, or worship, are not arbitrary rules, but expressions of divine holiness. The covenant is a call to live in harmony with God's will, and purity is the key to that alignment. Through the observance of these laws, the people of Israel are reminded that they are set apart, chosen to be holy as God is holy. This emphasis on purity is not just about external actions. It is about the internal condition of the heart. The Book of Jubilees stresses that maintaining the purity of the covenant requires more than just following rules. It requires a heart that is devoted to God, a life that is dedicated to righteousness and truth. It is a call to live in a way that honors the sanctity of God's commandments and reflects His holiness to the world. In our modern world, where moral relativism and impurity are often celebrated, the call to purity can feel out of place. We live in a time where boundaries are often blurred, and the lines between right and wrong are frequently debated. But the Book of Jubilees offers us a counter-cultural message that purity, both in our actions and in our hearts, is essential to maintaining our covenant relationship with God. We can look to the example of Abraham, whose faithfulness and commitment to God's commands led to the establishment of the covenant that would shape the future of Israel. Abraham's willingness to adhere to the call to purity, even when it was difficult or unpopular, shows us the power of living in alignment with God's will. His life was marked by faithfulness to the covenant, and as a result, his descendants were blessed. The call to purity is not an easy one. It requires us to confront the distractions and impurities that often consume our lives and turn our attention back to what truly matters. It calls us to live with integrity, to honor our commitments, and to seek righteousness above all else. In doing so, we not only fulfill the covenant, but also reflect the divine holiness that God desires for His people. As we consider the purity of the covenant, we must ask ourselves, how committed are we to living a life that is pure and set apart for God? How often do we allow the distractions of the world to pull us away from the righteousness that God desires? The Book of Jubilees calls us to return to a life of holiness, to embrace the purity of the covenant, and to live in a way that honors God's commandments. The vision of redemption. Hope for the future. As we conclude our journey through the Book of Jubilees, we encounter one of the most profound and powerful aspects of the text, its vision of redemption. This vision is not just about the past, but points forward to a future where righteousness is restored, where Israel is redeemed, and where God's ultimate justice and peace will reign. It is a promise that extends beyond the immediate trials and tribulations of life and offers hope for the ultimate restoration of all things. The Book of Jubilees contains prophetic visions about the future of Israel, and by extension, the future of the world. It speaks of a time when God's covenant will be fully realized, when His people will be restored to their rightful place, and when His kingdom will be established on earth. This vision of redemption is a central theme in the Bible, and Jubilees amplifies it with a sense of urgency and hope. In the midst of the challenges and hardships we face today, the promise of redemption offers us a powerful source of hope. It reminds us that our current struggles are not the end of the story. There is a future coming where justice will prevail, where peace will reign, and where God's people will live in harmony with His will. This is not just an abstract concept. It is a divine promise, a reality that will come to pass in God's perfect timing. But the vision of redemption is not just about waiting for the future. It is about living in anticipation of that future now. The Book of Jubilees calls us to live in a way that reflects our hope in God's ultimate plan. It challenges us to live with faithfulness, to remain committed to the covenant, and to be active participants in the unfolding of God's redemptive plan. As we reflect on this vision of redemption, we are reminded that our lives are not disconnected from the divine story. We are part of a larger narrative, one that is moving toward a glorious conclusion. Our actions, our faithfulness, and our commitment to living in alignment with God's will are all integral to that story. The Book of Jubilees invites us to live with hope, to anticipate the coming redemption, and to align our lives with the future that God has promised. It challenges us to be faithful stewards of His covenant and to live as people who are marked by the hope of redemption. As we do, we not only participate in the unfolding of God's plan, but also experience the peace and joy that comes from living in harmony with His divine purpose. The promise of redemption is a gift, a reminder that no matter what we face in this life, God's ultimate victory is assured. As we live in the light of that promise, we find the strength to endure, the courage to persevere, and the hope to carry us through every trial. As we come to the close of this journey through the timeless truths of the Book of Jubilees, I want to pause and reflect on the powerful message we've uncovered together. The Sabbath, the covenant, the role of angels, and the sacredness of divine purity. They are not just stories from an ancient past. They are invitations for us to align our lives with the divine will today. These teachings are as relevant now as they were when they were first revealed, and they hold the keys to unlocking a deeper, more meaningful relationship with the Creator. Perhaps you felt the stirring in your heart as we explored these sacred themes. Maybe something in the words of Jubilees has resonated with you, igniting a spark of clarity or peace in the midst of your life's struggles. That is the power of these divine truths. They transcend time, culture, and circumstance. They remind us that we are part of something far greater than ourselves, a divine narrative that is unfolding in ways we may never fully understand, but one that is always leading us toward love, healing, and redemption. The Book of Jubilees calls us to purify our hearts, to embrace holiness in the midst of a world that often celebrates imperfection. It challenges us to seek the eternal covenant, to be faithful to our Creator in ways both grand and small. It invites us to rest in the divine rhythm of the Sabbath, trusting that in God's perfect time, all things will be restored. And most importantly, it shows us that we are never alone on this journey. We have divine messengers, angels, and guides who walk with us, helping us navigate the challenges of life and reminding us of the ultimate hope we have in God's eternal redemption. Perhaps, like many of us, you have felt lost or overwhelmed in moments of your life. The darkness, the confusion, the uncertainty, it can feel like a heavy weight. But through the words of Jubilees, we are reminded that there is always light. The redemption that the book promises is not just a future hope. It is something that we can begin to experience right now. It's in the quiet moments of prayer, in the act of turning our hearts back to God, in choosing faithfulness over fear. This is the path of restoration that each of us is called to walk. And as we walk this path together, I ask for your support. If this video has spoken to you, if it has brought light to your heart in ways you didn't expect, I invite you to give a little energy back. Every like, every comment, every moment you share this message with someone else, it matters. Your support, no matter how small it seems, is invaluable in helping continue this work. It fuels me to keep sharing these truths, to keep creating content that can speak to souls and help others find their way in the world. I've been blessed to be part of this journey with you, and I feel deeply honored that you've taken the time to join me today. If you feel that this video has brought value to your spirit, or if it has helped you find a bit of light in the darkness, I ask you to subscribe, to like, and to share. Your support means more than words can express. It is the energy that keeps me moving forward, bringing these messages of hope and healing to all who need them. Every single word you share, every moment you take to encourage this work, helps spread the light of God's truth. And that light, whether it's a small flicker or a blazing fire, has the power to change lives. So, if this video has impacted you in any way, I encourage you to comment below. What resonates with you? What part of the story of Jubilees has touched your heart the most? Let's start a conversation, one that can continue to grow and bring more people into the fold of God's love. Thank you, from the deepest part of my heart, for being here, for watching, for sharing. Your presence and support are a gift, and together we can continue to spread these divine truths that uplift, heal, and transform. May God bless you abundantly, and may you find peace and purpose in the eternal covenant He offers to each of us. Remember, no matter what you're facing, the hope of redemption is always within reach, just as it was promised in the Book of Jubilees, and just as it remains a living, breathing truth in our lives today. With all my gratitude and love, thank you for walking this journey with me. Keep shining your light, and may you find strength in the eternal promise that God is always with you, guiding you and leading you toward healing and peace.